It's the boy, Bubba, let's coming through. Hella clutch, flawless, can't be touched. It's your boy, Bubba, let's. Yeah, I need that hot take. I need the truth and everything that is not fake. So tell me who's the GOAT, I'll tell you who's not great. And which team always make you go right way. Yeah, hold on.
And welcome back to another episode of the Bubble Lutz Sports Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, of course, Bubble Lutz, and I'm bringing you episode 119 of the podcast, Free Agency Frenzy Quarterback Edition. We have a lot of players to talk about offensively, defensively. We're going to break this down into a couple episodes. We did one on just the Cowboys itself. We're also going to do an updated one later on this week because there's some moves that have been done since the last episode. But this is going to be for the quarterbacks itself. We're going to do one for the offensive players later on, defensive players. There's so many quarterbacks to talk about. So we're gonna talk about their contracts, whether it was a good move or not, in my opinion, and give you my reaction to everything, because it's been a hectic week of sports, even though there's not been sports played. So before I get into the topics that we'll talk about today, I hope everything is good at home with you guys, everyone that's listening, everyone that's watching right now through all the platforms that we have the podcast on. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're doing good. Hopefully you're not going crazy in quarantine. But I hope these episodes get you through the day, get through the week. It's been a long week ever since sports has really been suspended and postponed. But I hope that this news and my excitement gets you excited for sports to come, and we get through this tough time in the world. But with that said, let's get right into the podcast. Number one, who else, right? Tom Brady signs officially earlier this morning with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 2 years, $50 million, guaranteed money, fully guaranteed, and there should be an extra $9 million in incentives that could be done over the next 2 years for Tom Brady. It's weird. I've been a huge advocate of Tom Brady staying in New England. I thought he would stay in New England. So the fact that not only did he move on from New England, and the reports that are coming out that even last year during training camp, he was thinking about walking out because of the issues going on and the fact that the contract disputes weren't going in his favor. And yet Pats gave him more money, threw more money at him, and he stayed for the following 2019 year. And yet this year he wanted to explore free agency, see what he can get, and didn't feel valued by the New England Patriots. And this is kind of more of the same coming out of New England, of not valuing a player based on his stardom, based on his popularity. It is based on, look, how can we win championships, save money, and give ourselves plenty of room to get an outstanding team rather than outstanding players get us to the Super Bowl. And it's the same thing that happened with Gronk, same thing that happened with a lot of their defensive players. Even this year with Kyle Van Noy moving on from New England, you see a lot of these players not getting high, big money contracts, even though they're superstars in New England, because that's just how the organization is ran. And Tom Brady is a part of that as well. No matter how many years, no matter how many championships you've won in New England, it doesn't matter, because they're not going to pay you the big bucks in a broken quarterback market. And I think the Pats see that. I think Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick see that, and they're not going to fall into the trap. So for the Bucs side, moving on from Jameis Winston, finally, I did not expect them to extend him, did not expect them to fully invest into Jameis Winston. And the fact that they get Tom Brady is even more in their favor. So along with Tom Brady, I think that the bigger thing here is to look at the different moves that the Bucs made around Tom Brady to give him more of a feel of like security of, this is a good team, I'm going to succeed here. And the Bucs franchising outside linebacker Shaquille Barrett, re-signing Jason Pierre-Paul, getting some good depth at that defensive side of the ball. Vita Vea also on that defensive line. Great, outstanding players on that defensive side. They signed Joe Haeg, offensive lineman, from the Indianapolis Colts. A good pickup. The Indianapolis Colts have done a phenomenal job over these last couple of years to protect the quarterback. It was a little bit too late with Andrew Luck, but they did a very good job of that with Jacoby Brissett last year and the final year of Andrew Luck. So to get a good, solid right tackle for the Tampa Bay Bucks, and hey, good pickup because Tom Brady needs protection. Never really had that consistently for a few amount of years in New England. He had it in a couple stints, but nothing legitimately for an outstanding part of his career. So for the Bucks to make that a priority, even better. Now they're already stacked on offense with Ronald Jones II at the running back position. Great pickup from USC just a couple years ago. Mike Evans, one of the best wide receivers in the league. Chris Godwin, solid performance last year in fantasy on the field last year. The second or third guy for Tampa Bay at that receiving core. He does a very good job of bouncing off of Mike Evans while he has the double team. Chris Godwin is a solid, fast, agile guy, and he's going to do even better now with a consistent guy in Tom Brady. O.J. Howard and Cameron Brate at the tight end position. If those guys can stay healthy, solid weapons for Tom Brady to throw to throughout the season. And if you can get some protection with Joe on the right tackle side, figure out that left side, blind side, and the rest of the offensive line, you have yourselves a Tampa Bay Bucks team that lost a lot of their games last year because they went 7-9. A lot of the games last year were decided by one possession or less. They could have made the playoffs, and with the CBA going in their favor over the next couple of years with an extended amount of teams going in the playoffs, this could favor tremendously the Bucks a lot, especially in an NFC South division that is stacked with Matt Ryan, with Teddy Bridgewater now in Carolina, and also Drew Brees in New Orleans. So you got a really competitive NFC South, but you have Drew Brees, Tom Brady, some of the GOATs, also with some great talent, Teddy Bridgewater, that finally gets his chance to redeem himself at a starting position other than his New Orleans performance. And Matt Ryan, who has a lot to prove this year with an Atlanta Falcons team that is rebuilding and getting a lot of free agency help this past offseason. So we'll talk about them later on in some other podcast episodes. But a competitive NFC South, now with Tom Brady in there. You're talking about a Tampa Bay Bucks team that is getting better because of the fact they have Bruce Arians as their head coach, who I trust without a doubt. He had some great years in Arizona, some bad years, but he learned to tough it out, get some great performances out of his players, even though he didn't have the talent and depth to do so. And his first year with the Tampa Bay Bucks went okay. I think the biggest issue was Jameis Winston, and now the fact that they're moving on from him is even better. I see the Tampa Bay Bucks team, when you look at it, first reaction, Tom Brady, it just doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel like a good fit. I thought Los Angeles with the Chargers was going to be a better fit for Tom Brady. But now looking at the roster, now looking at what the Bucks have done in free agency along with Brady and Bruce Arians at the helm, you could see a huge change in Tampa with more popularity, more market share, more attention on them. And I saw the report to, I want to say to Adam Schefter. I want to say to Adam Schefter, but the report that says that Tom Brady's looking to really put an emphasis on he was the reason why the New England Patriots are so successful for 20 years in their dynasty. Now he has another chip on his shoulder of he's a Hall of Famer. He's won so many titles. He's won 6. He's the Michael Jordan of the NFL. Yet now he has something else to prove. He's not a system quarterback. He's not a prototype of what the New England Patriots have done for so many years. Of yes, he's a good player, but he's even better in a system like New England. And you talk about a guy that was frustrated last year with a wide receiver core that did not know the system. They could not learn the system, or they couldn't stay healthy. Julian Edelman was the only guy that was good last year for the New England Patriots because he's been there for so long. N'Keal Harry was okay, not great. You know that he can be great in a few years, but Mohamed Sanu really struggled. Philip Dorsett struggled. Their running backs did not do as well in previous years with James White, with Rex Burkhead, and Sony Michel. Tom Brady was the only positive, was the only real strive to greatness in that offense. And he was frustrated. You can see it in many different games of being done with a lot of the receivers not being able to read their routes. And for him to go into a Bucs offense that is going to be easier to learn for these receivers, it's going to be easier to learn for him because he's been in the league so long. Bruce Arians having a plethora of history successfully with quarterbacks. You talk about Carson Palmer. The list goes on and on about how many great quarterbacks Bruce Arians has worked with. And now he has the Hall of Famer, the GOAT, to work with now in his last few years, but now has that urge, now has that aggressiveness to be better and to prove himself. This is a solid fit looking at it now for Tom Brady, and I'm excited to see what the Bucs can do in 2 years with Tom Brady and Bruce Arians together. Number 2 on the free agency frenzy list for the quarterbacks is Drew Brees. Nothing special here, right? Nothing special here. 2 years, $50 million. They extend him once again, another 2-year contract for him. $23.5 million of that is a signing bonus, and it will hit the Saints in their salary cap this year. But considering that $23.5 million sounds like a lot to you and me, it's not a lot to the salary cap for the Saints. It's actually one of the lowest in the market right now. Small hit to their salary cap considering other quarterbacks. You talk about a guy that's going to be a Saint forever. He wants to retire as a Saint because he's been there his entire career, except for the Chargers years. But it didn't matter. The Chargers years don't count, right? Their offense isn't the problem. Like Michael Thomas, one of the best receivers in the NFL. Alvin Kamara didn't have the best year last year, but could really bounce back in his 3rd year. Latavius Murray, also a great back. I want to see more of that 2-back set for the Saints. It's really more of the issues that are going to go on in their defensive side, losing their linebacker coach and Mike Nolan to the Cowboys, losing some of their secondary guys, Eli Apple moving away from the Saints. Von Bell going to be a free agent, yet to sign with somebody right now. And let's see what adjustments they make on the defensive side, because really offensively, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know on the defensive side if they're willing to make those changes and they're going to make good changes. Their offensive side of the ball is consistent. There's nothing that's going to change much on their offensive side. So signing Drew Brees, it makes sense. There's no reason why to not go Drew Brees. He played very well. He had some of his numbers decline, yet can you really say that he's now not at the elite level anymore, or he's still top 10, top 5 in the NFL as far as quarterbacks go? He's still one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league, one of the most consistent quarterbacks in the league. He makes minimal mistakes. He will get you points. He will get you drives in the clutch. And with a stacked team around him, no reason for me to say that Drew Brees is not the best option for the New Orleans Saints. Taysom Hill, he's tendered 1st round by the Saints. He wants to be a starting quarterback somewhere. And there was some, conversations of Taysom Hill being the starting quarterback for the Saints, but really all in all, you stick to what works. Don't fix it if it's not broken, and it's not broken in New Orleans with Drew Brees. At number 3, Dak Prescott. Now, I'm not going to talk about this because of the fact that we mentioned it in the last podcast. The Cowboys ran up, so if you want to know more about Dak Prescott, go and check out that video or check out that podcast on your music platforms, because I go in depth in there. All in all, in one sentence, how can I describe it? Good thing. As far as Dak Prescott getting his money for 1 year, it's a terrible thing for the Cowboys in the long term. Number 4, Ryan Tannehill. Jesus Christ, 4-year extension, $118 million, $62 million fully guaranteed money, and $91 million in total guaranteed money. You're talking about a guy that went 7-2, 7-3 as a starter for the Tennessee Titans, had his time in Miami. He was the guy, but had so many injuries that they traded him last year in the middle part of the season and took over for Marcus Mariota as the starting quarterback for the Titans. Yes, I get it. Those numbers do not lie in the regular season. The man stepped up. He came in and really took over for that offense. A little bit tainted, though, in the conversation because of the fact that that's when Derrick Henry really took off and had an outstanding rest of the year, outstanding postseason. And yet, Tannehill was named the NFL Comeback Player of the Year, which shouldn't have been the case in my opinion. I think there were some other guys in that list that should have won that award. All in all, though, huge win for Tannehill to get his money. He won this contract. I mean, you talk about some of the people, so like Drew Brees, Tom Brady, this is a win-win on both sides. This is a win on Tannehill's side for sure. Because a guy like that who fit perfectly in the Tennessee Titans offense scheme with Mike Vrabel, running play action, perfect timing with Derrick Henry coming in and taking over the league. Talk about a guy that only had to do play action, and he had one-on-one man coverage matchups across the board. He had Corey Davis. He had, in my opinion, the offensive rookie of the year. He had great weapons around him. There was no way for Tannehill to fail in that offense. So for him to get that much money, now be the 7th or 8th highest paid quarterback in the league, he is now top 10 in that list, right around Dak Prescott, right around Matt Ryan. This is the epitome of why the quarterback market is so broken. When I look at that list of the top paid quarterbacks in the league, I'm going to read off the names of the quarterbacks that are going to make less than Ryan Tannehill these upcoming years. Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Dak Prescott, because I'm just a Cowboys guy. Those three guys. And you can name some more. You can name some more. Teddy Bridgewater. You can name... what are some other names that really came up there? Andy Dalton. Cam Newton. Blah, blah, blah. The list goes on and on about that. Out of those three names, Brady, Brees, and Dak, name me a quarterback in that list that is better than Ryan Tannehill. Brady, yeah. Brees, yeah. Dak Prescott, yeah. So how can you say that the market makes sense and the market is solid and not broken, along with the fact that Ryan Tannehill deserves this amount of money, when guys like, I don't know, Nick Foles, Phillip Rivers actually makes less than Ryan Tannehill, but Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff, these guys that are making elite money when they haven't been elite. The Jared Goff contract has been a bust. The Carson Wentz contract, many can argue that he's worth it. Many will argue that he's not worth it. I'm kind of in the middle of saying it's not proven yet. But he can definitely prove it in the next few years in that contract. Who else? Who would I just name? Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, Nick Foles, Kirk Cousins. Have they been worth it? No. Will Ryan Tannehill be worth it at $91 million guaranteed? Absolutely not. He just happened to be at the right place at the right time. The fact that the Titans franchised Derrick Henry, even though he is the guy that they should give money to, and they have to pay either one of these guys because both markets are broken, whether you go running back or quarterback. The market for a quarterback is going to be around $30 million a year, and that's right where Tannehill is going to make that money. When people are arguing whether Dak Prescott is worth $30 million, whether or not Tom Brady is worth $30 million, and that's why he left New England, how about you take a look at Ryan Tannehill's contract and say, is that really worth it? Do I think he's the comeback player of the year? No. He was just at the right place at the right time. Look at his postseason stats. In the 3 games that he played this past season, the only 3 postseason games he's ever played in his career, Derrick Henry pops off. Over 100 yards, close to 200 yards, touchdown after touchdown, brutalizing offense or defenses. And there's Ryan Tannehill, who throws 20 times in a game at best. He has a 60% completion percentage. He's a game manager. And he did most of his stats in the regular season. But you can't tell me that it was all Ryan Tannehill and it was more Derrick Henry bouncing off for Tannehill that got him those stats. I'm looking at the talent. I'm looking at Ryan Tannehill as the quarterback. Do I think he's worth that money? Absolutely not. But good for him to get that money. And number 5, Phillip Rivers signs a 1-year, $25 million contract with the Indianapolis Colts. Finally moving on from the Chargers, San Diego / Los Angeles. I've never been a fan of Phillip Rivers. In my opinion, if he is a Hall of Famer, if he is one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game, if he is top 10, top 5 in passing yards, touchdowns, in all of those quarterback stats, how did he not win a championship in San Diego, in Los Angeles? Let's just talk about the San Diego portion. He had LaDainian Tomlinson. They were one of the best offenses in the league. Didn't even make it to a Super Bowl. In Los Angeles, with an offense, in my opinion, was stacked in every aspect imaginable. With Keenan Allen, with Williams, with Austin Eckler, with Melvin Gordon, with a defense in Bosa, Ingram, James. You're talking about Pro Bowlers across the board and a so-called Hall of Fame quarterback in Phillip Rivers. He is Eli Manning for San Diego. He is the roughneck. He is the Chargers organization. He epitomizes what they are and the history that they've done in the 21st century. How have they not won a championship? How did they not win a championship or even make it to a Super Bowl with Phillip Rivers and all those weapons around him? It's because, to me, Phillip Rivers is an overrated quarterback. And people look at this contract and say, what a deal. I'm saying $25 million for a washed-up quarterback. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't like the way he throws. I don't like his fire anymore. I don't like his emotion because it's in the wrong place. I want you to look at that game last year against the Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl winning Kansas City Chiefs. It was done in Mexico City at Estadio Azteca. Watch that game for Phillip Rivers and tell me that guy deserves to be one of the best in the NFL and go down as one of the greatest. Tell me that you watched that game with 4 interceptions and absolutely atrocious throws across that game. And tell me that Phillip Rivers is worth paying $25 million a year and be the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. I'll wait. Because to me, watching those games last year and watching him throughout these last 3 or 4 years, that man is past his prime. That man is not worth the money. And he's not worthy of being a number 1 guy for years to come. He's 38. Age is not in his favor. Luckily, he's not dealt with a lot of injuries. Yet, every little aspect of Phillip Rivers, throwing, decision-making, does not fit the bill for me as a starting quarterback anymore in this league. Especially at his age, it's time to move on. It's time to look at other options. Honestly, with the market going on right now, I thought the Colts could look into Tom Brady. They could have looked into Teddy Bridgewater. If you're looking for a guy to replace Jacoby Brissett, who I think, honestly, is a solid quarterback that has still a lot of room to grow. And then if you wanted a better version of it, if you want to go from like a Walmart version to a Gucci version, that's Teddy Bridgewater for me. A guy that's mobile, that can use his legs, but very accurate, very good at decision making. Teddy Bridgewater should have been the choice for the Indianapolis Colts. Yet they go the Phillip Rivers route, and I'm just not a big fan of it. And number 6, since we just mentioned him, Teddy Bridgewater, 3 years, $63 million. A $63 million contract, $15 million signing bonus, and $40 million of that guaranteed in the first 2 years, signing with the Carolina Panthers. I love this move. I think, along with Tom Brady, I think this is the best move out of the quarterback free agency market. Solid contract, nothing huge as far as salary cap hits for the Carolina Panthers, who are now in a rebuilding stage, in my opinion. Now that you have your top guys like Luke Kuechly, Cam Newton, and all those guys that were part of the 2015 Super Bowl season are now starting to go away. And now you bring in Matt Rule from Baylor. You bring in Joe Brady from LSU, the quarterback coach there. I think that's why I love this move so much. A now more offensive-friendly coach and system, along with Joe Brady, who has made Drew Brees look even better, who has made Joe Burrow look even better, and now he gets another stint in the NFL with the Carolina Panthers. I love the move with Joe Brady. I'm excited to see what Matt Rule does now moving from Baylor to the NFL, because I did think that it was too early, too soon for him to move on from Baylor. He had one phenomenal year because of how bad Baylor was for so many years, and everyone jumped the gun on Matt Rule. I don't know how he'll do in the first year. I think there'll be a huge attitude adjustment, and the fact that they're rebuilding, you're talking about a new offensive-friendly system with Christian McCaffrey, with some solid weapons on the outside. Greg Olsen has now left, so they need to find the replacement for the tight end. They need some help on the defensive side now with Luke Kuechly gone. It's going to be tough now that he retired. All in all, though, I do like Teddy Bridgewater being the number one guy and allowing, let's say for 3 years, Teddy Bridgewater is a starter, allowing Kyle Allen or Will Grier, in my opinion, Will Grier would be the starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers someday, giving them some time to learn the system under new system of Matt Rule and Joe Brady. All three of those guys, Allen, Grier, and Bridgewater, will be better quarterbacks because of Joe Brady. He made Drew Brees look better in so many years of being in the league. He made them top like all the rankings as far as quarterbacks go in the NFL when Joe Brady was with New Orleans and Drew Brees. So now with Teddy Bridgewater, Grier, Allen, these are projects that he can do and work with that are going to work in his favor, and I like the move a lot. I think the reason why they actually went for this move is what's been the whole issue with the Carolina Panthers. It's inconsistency at that quarterback position. Cam Newton for so many years, and we don't like Cam Newton on this podcast. And then the last year with Will Grier, Kyle Allen, for 4 games, Kyle Allen looked like the best quarterback in the league, and then he fell off, and it was just inconsistent from there, losing a lot of their games by 1 possession or less. Inconsistency in the clutch. You talk about a guy that is 5-0 as a starter in New Orleans. A lot of people will say he was just a game manager. Maybe that's exactly what the Panthers need at this moment. They need a consistent guy that won't take those huge plays down the field. He'll just get those easy throws, get the momentum going on offense. But now you have Christian McCaffrey, who honestly works very well alongside Alvin Kamara, what Teddy Bridgewater had in New Orleans. Just now, I think a better version of it, because Christian McCaffrey is now striving to work even better and be the best running back in the NFL, because he can be passing, he can be running, he can be blocking. Christian McCaffrey is the perfect running back. Now that he's bulked up more, I think it's an improvement for Teddy Bridgewater from Kamara. Kamara had an off year last year. Now you don't have to worry about that, because Christian McCaffrey is only going to get better. Now that he's just in his prime. He's definitely in his prime right now. Now you have some receivers to work with, too. Let's see what they do in free agency with Curtis Samuel and some other weapons around him. DJ Moore, who I like a lot from college. He had a good first year as well. So for Teddy Bridgewater to move on and finally get his chance to be the starting quarterback, to be the number one guy on that depth chart, I really like the move on both sides, contract-wise, Teddy Bridgewater-wise. You think about a guy that was not even considering playing football a couple years ago. He was about to lose his leg from that knee injury that he had a few years ago when he was with the Minnesota Vikings. Now this man earned himself a contract, earned his way into a starting position as a quarterback in the NFL. I think it's a great move by both sides, and 3 years in Carolina, even better for Teddy Bridgewater. Number 7, Marcus Mariota. Signed with the Raiders. In free agency, the Raiders are doing some good things, some bad things. This falls under the bad things for the Raiders. Contract details have not been disclosed. As of right now, he is set to be the backup to Derek Carr. I think this was a disgrace to the respect of Derek Carr. He deserves better. When the fact that the Raiders were going after Tom Brady, they were going after Marcus Mariota, they were going after all these guys in free agency, and yet the quarterback position is nowhere near their issues at quarterback or in their offense and team in general. They need defense, and those good moves that they've done have a lot to do with defense. They've gotten a lot of Cowboys guys in this free agency market in this offseason, like Malik Collins, a great inside tackle, and Jeff Heath. To a lot of people, that's an upgrade to their position at safety. Okay, some other big names as well that we'll go into in another episode. On offense, though, you still need receivers. You still need a tight end, and Jason Witten isn't a long-term solution. He is not a solution at all, in my opinion. He's past his prime, and he's not going to do much for you on offense. But when I can't even tell you more than one guy on their wide receiver depth chart, that's a problem. You think that getting a quarterback and giving some competition to Derek Carr is what you need. No, you need weapons around Derek Carr. If he can stay healthy, that's your main issue. If Derek Carr can stay healthy. But it's not his abilities. Josh Jacobs is, to me, the rookie of the year last year. And he's a solid running back. So you can work off of him. But when you have no one to throw to, if you're Derek Carr, and all your offense is Josh Jacobs, I don't care if you plug in Marcus Mariota or not. You saw what he could do with Derrick Henry, who is one of the best running backs in the league as well. And he had more weapons to work with. Because he had Corey Davis. He had Delaney Walker for so many years. And you mean to tell me that putting him at the starting position at the Raiders is a good solution to Derek Carr? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So if he's the starter, if he's the backup, I don't care. I didn't like the move at all. At number 8, the final move in free agency was Nick Foles. The Bears traded for Nick Foles from the Jaguars, gave up a 4th rounder for him. Most likely will restructure his broken contract. To me, we've done an episode. I can't remember when we did that episode. But when the Jaguars signed Nick Foles, I thought it was a waste of money. And really it was. He broke his clavicle in the first game against the Kansas City Chiefs, came back in week 11 or 12. Gardner Minshew took over as a starter, and Nick Foles took over, but he was immediately benched. Gardner Minshew finished off the season and will probably be the starting quarterback for the Jaguars. And now Nick Foles, what was that? I can't remember how much money he made. What was the guaranteed contract for Nick Foles? Nick Foles, we're going to look this up because I'm a unprepared asshole. Nick Foles, Jaguars contract. How much of that was guaranteed? 4 years, $88 million. How much was that guaranteed? Just tell me. Just give me the number. Oh, $50 million of that was guaranteed. A max value of $102 million. In the Bears aspect, there's still $21 million left to be made for Nick Foles. Now, if they restructure that, which they should, that's still a hit, man. $50 million that guaranteed by the Jaguars. And one of my biggest concerns was who was going to pay this contract. And it looks like the Bears will pick it up. So they're going to restructure that. It's a tough situation for the Bears because this officially, to me, says that they're giving up on Mitchell Trubisky. I thought he was a high draft pick. I always thought he was too high. They gave up on Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. Dear God, this is horrible for the Bears. And he hasn't gotten any better. and now they replace him with Nick Foles. I read an article about the contract, about the trade, and they said, look, the Mitchell Trubisky era is now over. They've given up on Mitch. And they wrote in the article, it's Nick Foles. Like, even then, you could hear the tone of the story just by reading it. Of like, yeah, it's Nick Foles, but it's Nick Foles. Yeah, he won a Super Bowl, but it's Nick Foles, right? It's an upgrade, but how much an upgrade is that? Because the defense in Chicago, dear God, man, Robert Quinn, Khalil Mack, no longer have Ha Clinton Dix, though. Let's see if they re-sign Prince Mukamara. Raquan Smith. Their defense is ferocious. Chuck Pagano has done a very good job of that. When you look at the stats last year, though, it's a little deceiving due to the fact that they were on the field for so many minutes. Their offense could not stay on the field because of the fact of Mitchell Trubisky. I'm looking to see if there's any breaking news on my phone for all the people listening. So if I break a little bit, just that's the reason why. The offense could not stay on the field. There were so many games where their kicker was their best player. Eddie Pinheiro popped off throughout the year. But their defense had to stay on the field, so they were on the field for like 30-plus minutes. And no matter who you are, whether it's Khalil Mack, Raquan Smith, Robert Quinn, if you stay on the field for 30-plus minutes on defense, you're not going to succeed. You're not going to win football games. And if this is the Bears' solution to this problem, is it a good one? It's a better one than Mitchell Trubisky. That's the best I could say about that. To give up a fourth rounder for him, not bad. Restructuring his contract is more important to this part of the deal than the deal itself. So if Foles still makes $21 million of the rest of that contract, this is a bad move by the Bears. If they can restructure that and get some other weapons around him, because they have some good, not great players on offense. They did sign some guys. They signed Jimmy Graham from the Packers, so he stays in the division, NFC North. I'm not a big fan of Jimmy Graham anymore because I think his best years are past him. And if you can't work with Aaron Rodgers, then what makes you think he's going to work with Nick Foles? There's still a lot of work to be done by the Bears. It's a step in the right direction, but it's a small step. So finally, we're at the point to where the quarterbacks that have yet to find a home and where they will land. Number one on that list is Cam Newton. For all the people watching, you can see the expression on my face and know where I'm going with this. For all the people listening, I just sat back in my chair, so that's why I'm a little distant and a little echoey. If you're a fan of this podcast, you know, hands down, that I'm not a fan of Cam Newton. Never been a fan of Cam Newton. And over the last couple of years, it's been my campaign to say that the Carolina Panthers should move on from Cam Newton. Will Grier should be the starting quarterback, and I thought by getting him in the draft last year was a sign of that, sign of the times. And yet there was still all the speculation, all these reports saying if he can come back healthy, Cam Newton can, he will be the starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. And the Kyle Allen era started. You're saying, wow, this is definitely saying that the Cam Newton era should end. This should have ended years ago. This should have ended 2016, 2015, or 2017. The fact that people are still living in the times of the MVP year of 2015, Super Bowl year for Cam Newton, is beyond me, because if you still live in that time and still think that Cam Newton's a starting quarterback somewhere in the NFL, you are out of your goddamn mind. And the fact that the way that it's going down right now with the trade talks, it should symbolize why Cam Newton should not be a starting quarterback anymore in the league. Because the Panthers have said, we will allow Cam Newton to seek a trade, and Cam Newton immediately comes out and says, you're lying. You are forcing me to be traded, and you're forcing someone to trade for me. This is just one of of many things that have described why Cam Newton has been a bust for me ever since that 2015 season. Because of the fact of the way he handles himself. Not just the fashion. I'm fine with the fashion. I'm fine with him, wanting to be different. Wanting to be a outlier and be a fashion icon of some sort. It's when the fashionista in Cam Newton became more than the player. On the field, he was okay. He was not accurate enough. He was not smart enough. He was not fast enough. He was not durable enough. He had so many injuries. He threw bad balls. He would throw darts when it's just a 2-yard pass to Christian McCaffrey. He would throw a 100-mile-per-hour throw or pass when it was not necessary. His decision-making did not make sense on and off the field. The fashion's okay. Many people will argue that. It's those videos that I saw where a 15-year-old kid started talking a little bit of trash to Cam Newton. And you're going to have haters. You're going to have people that are not going to be a fan of yours, and they're going to think that you're washed up, like me. But the way that you handle it, when you're Tom Brady, when you're Peyton Manning, the best of the best. And they take it professionally. They say, hey, you hate me? You don't think I'm fast enough? You don't think I'm smart enough? That's cool. I'm just going to prove it on the field. I'm just going to shut up, and I'm going to prove myself. What Cam Newton did with this kid, when he's half his age, he gets in his face and steps up to him like he's gonna fight him. By no means should that be your starting quarterback. By no means should that be the face of your franchise. And when you go on the field and you prove even more while you're not a starting quarterback because you don't know how to throw properly, you don't know how to be accurate, your completion percentage is below average, and you're living off the high of the 2015 season, by no means you should be a quarterback in the NFL. And I'm so happy. I know this is kind of toxic, but I'm so happy that there's reports that says that there's not a huge market for him right now. The only teams that have expressed some interest is the Chargers and the Patriots asking for medical records. I thought the best move for Cam Newton was going to be the Bears. That's what I thought. I thought that was going to be the best move for Cam Newton. Now, he's probably not even going to be a starting quarterback, and rightfully so. So, it's for so many months and close to a year now of me bashing on Cam Newton, we made it, right? We made it. And if he has a problem with it, let's get on the podcast so we can get right up in my face and prove my point. Number 2 on that list of still trying to find a home is Jameis Winston. Now, Tom Brady's the successor to Jameis Winston. And I can just say right now, Bruce Arians did the right thing for letting him go. One of the worst quarterbacks in the league. Eddie, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, and you're saying, and he has told me so many times that he will be an MVP candidate next year. Oh, okay. All right. Being number 1 in passing yards is great. That is cool. That proves that you're doing something right. Leading the league in interceptions is not. Who do I despise in the argument of being a Hall of Famer? Eli Manning. He led the league in interceptions twice. And he has not been good in the NFL since 2011 when he won that second Super Bowl. And even then, that's not the reason why they won the Super Bowl. He led the league in interceptions twice after 2011. And he barely retired this past season. When did Jameis Winston get drafted? 2014, 2015? In 5 or 6 years, who has been the better quarterback between him and Mariota? Mariota by that much. This past season was flipped. Jameis Winston was the better quarterback compared to Mariota. That does not mean that Jameis Winston is a great quarterback. His decision making is awful. His accuracy is okay. And the fact that the stat that I threw at you at the beginning of the episode, where the Buccaneers lost so many of their games by one possession or less, 3 points, 4 points, a touchdown, a lot of it had to do with the fact that Jameis Winston would throw 3 or 4 interceptions in a game. 3 or 4 interceptions in a game, and not just once, multiple times. It doesn't matter if you throw for 500 yards. 4 interceptions in a game is awful. You should not be a starting quarterback in the NFL if you throw 4 interceptions in a game. You have one instance a season. Tom Brady had his moments. He had games where he threw 4 interceptions. But guess what? In those games where they did win, or he didn't throw 4 interceptions, he would throw maybe 1 at most. But he would make the throws that counted. He would make the throws that were important. He would be clutch in the clutch moments. He'd win games. He'd be consistent. Jameis Winston is not consistent. I don't care how much LASIK surgery he had. He's had plenty of time to prove himself in this league. And ever since he's been in this league, he's not lived up to the expectations of what he was in Florida State. If you can't do it with Bruce Arians, if you can't knock down those interceptions, and it even got worse this past season, you should not be a starting quarterback in the league again. And the market and the reports say that there's not a market for Jameis Winston to be a starting quarterback. Rightfully so. Same thing with Cam Newton. These two guys, to me, are overrated. They've been overvalued for so many years. The fact that Jameis Winston was even a starter at the beginning of the last season was ridiculous. He had a battle with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, to me, was a better quarterback, even though he fell off after that one Fitzpatrick month. It just doesn't fit either one of those guys, Fitzpatrick or Winston, in Tampa Bay anymore. Ryan moved over to Miami. Jameis stayed as a starting quarterback in Tampa. Guess what? You get passing yards, you get touchdowns, but you also get interceptions. And what loses you games? It's those interceptions. They went 7-9 with the so-called best quarterback stat-wise in the NFL. 7-9. They would barely make it in the CBA new rule of 2 more playoff teams in each conference. Jameis Winston is a bust. Jameis Winston is one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. Should not be a starting quarterback, and I don't expect him to get home either. Number 3 and number 4, just because it's pointless to talk about this, Andy Dalton, Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl, but he had 4 good games, and the rest of his career is trash. Andy Dalton has had plenty of time to prove himself. He was overstaying his welcome in Cincinnati, and he had so many years where he had A.J. Green, Joe Mixon. He had great running backs throughout those years. I mean, Stephon Ridley, he had... not Stephon Ridley. Did he go to Cincinnati? I don't know. Giovanni Bernard. He has great receivers. Tyler Boyd. He had Tyler Eifert. He had John Ross, the fastest guy in the NFL, and could not win games. They won 2 games last year, and Andy played the worst season of his career last year. He peaked in his second season in the league. Neither one of those guys deserves a job. The fact that the Denver Broncos picked up Joe Flacco in the first place, terrible. Andy Dalton, the fact that he stayed in Cincinnati for so long with Marvin Lewis, awful. So none of those 4 guys that I just named deserve a home. None of them. None of them. I'm a little toxic at the end of this episode, but hey, that's just how it is on the Bubble It Sports Podcast. So that's going to do it for the quarterback edition of the Free Agency Frenzy in the NFL. Episode 119 is in the books. We're getting to 120. Man, we're rolling through these. We're going to come back later on this week and probably do another episode right now on the Cowboys news. We're going to come back, talk about the other free agency signings on offense, defense, some teams that still need work to be done in free agency. See who's the quarterback now for for New England, who's the quarterback now for the Los Angeles Chargers. Who knows? We'll talk about that in another episode. So thank you for joining me on YouTube. Thank you for joining me on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you haven't subscribed or followed any one of those platforms, please do, and ring that bell on YouTube for alerts and notifications. We'll see you next time on the Bubble Sports Podcast.
Now would you lose if it been a better draft pick? And do you cuss when your team get their ass kicked? Now do you keep it classy or you keep it ratchet? For the man with the magic. Now who is he? It's the boy Bubba Lutz coming through. Hella clutch, flawless, can't be touched. It's the boy Bubba Lutz. Yeah, I need that hot take. I need the truth and everything that is not fake. So tell me who's the GOAT, I'll tell you who's not great. And which team always make you go right way. The Bubba Lutz Sports Podcast.